Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Y Community Manager webinar series. Today we have Tor Bair here from Enigma to talk about ambassador programs.
How's it going? And how are you?
Good. My name is Judy Gordon. I am the VP of Marketing for OmniSparks, and I'm the host for this. To get started, I just want to talk a little bit about the sponsors. OmniSparks is a premier collaboration platform for crypto organizations to create and share value in their communities. And the Chicago Blockchain Project, we have Joe here. Say hi, Joe.
Hello.
Is building an infrastructure for the city of Chicago to connect builders with resources and investors. All right, so let's start with some questions on the ambassador program.
Yeah, sure.
So why don't you start by just giving us an introduction and description of Enigma?
So Enigma is a project in the decentralization. Primarily, we're trying to solve this issue of privacy. We're at the intersection of data privacy solutions and decentralization. What Enigma actually is it's a protocol designed to allow is decentralized applications, smart contracts, so on the blockchain all need to use data as an input. So as a result, they're either using like a centralized solution for the data and for data computation, or they're putting all of that data on chain. So on the one hand, you haven't really come up with a decentralized application. And on the other hand, you've put everything on chain. And the problem with putting all your data on the blockchain is it is public, first of all, and second, blockchains are inherently like very difficult to scale, and that's by design. And similarly, they're public by design. So rather than trying to force a blockchain to be something it isn't, we have sort of like a layer 2 solution. I think of it all as part of this decentralized web stack. So Enigma is this data processing layer, this data privacy layer for the Web3 decentralized web stack.
Okay, great. So let's start. We brought you here to talk about your ambassador program.
Yes.
I think the first question is, what is an ambassador program?
For sure. It's different, I would say, probably for projects. First of all, different for projects in this decentralization space from like what you might think of an ambassador out in the world, like a brand ambassador. I already think there's a difference there. So when you think of a brand ambassador in the traditional world, maybe you're thinking of somebody who comes around in a bar and brings you like shots of something or bottles of Bud Light, and they're a brand ambassador, right? Like for some reason they're there to represent the brand of Bud Light and get people excited about Bud Light. And that's not the kind of ambassadors that I see in the decentralization space. You know, that assumes that like there's this like commerce function, right? Like you're a representative of some sort of faceless brand or consumer good. In the decentralization blockchain space, ambassadors are more evangelists for the underlying technology, as well as for like the mission and values of the project. There's probably a lot of people who participate as ambassadors of projects they support, and they don't even know it. Like you're an ambassador for Ethereum, or you're an ambassador for Bitcoin in a way. What's different about a structured ambassador program like we have with Enigma is we've created resources for ambassadors in the program. We work directly, a core team at Enigma, with the ambassadors to achieve all kinds of goals, not just for the project, but for decentralization and privacy more generally. We see ambassadors as just, part of the extended community of Enigma and the core of that community, because they've been handpicked to work with our project because we know they represent our values. We know they're aligned in our mission, and they demonstrate it every single day. So ambassadors to us is not like you go around in a bar and you try to convince people that something's delicious when it's not. It's more about how do we teach people why decentralization is important, why privacy is important, and we see them as partners in that mission. We work right alongside them.
So tell us more about your program. How did you find people, for example?
So, no, for sure. The ambassador program for us now is about 50 people in about 15 countries. And when we started the program, it was initially we were thinking, let's just find people all over the world already in our existing community. We've got a pretty large community already between, on Telegram and 60,000 people on Twitter, and like whoever's like just trying to keep tabs with the project. A lot of these people are trying to find more ways to contribute in the decentralization space that goes beyond just like holding or trading a token. So we started looking in that existing community, knowing these were people who already were interested in what we were building. And we just told people, if you're interested, if these values speak to you, if you want to do more, just apply. And that was it. Like, people applied. We got hundreds of applications even when we first launched the program. I don't take that for granted. But it's not like we were out there like paying people to be a part of this. The ambassador program for us is fully a volunteer program. And as a result, we get people who are very aligned on like mission and values. There's none of this like, you know that everybody else is there for the same reason that you are, which is you care about what the project is doing. You don't worry that somebody else is there for the money or something like that. Like, we all know that we're there to accomplish the same things. So we started inside the community, and then a lot of ambassadors or people who have applied since have actually come through like personal referrals, either ambassadors who knew other people in their communities, or people that we've met at Enigma events, or people who have joined the Enigma community. That's what it is. You know, we've found enough amazingly high quality people through doing that we haven't had to do much else except just listen to the people who are already coming to us and helping them be really effective ambassadors.
So what did that application process look like? So you had hundreds apply. Mm-hmm. What did that look like?
It's evolved. I want to stress one thing about all of this, which is that, you know, this program has evolved in a number of different stages. Where we are now is not where the program started. Like, no matter what, you have to like iterate on any of these programs, and how you organize people internally, how you recruit people, you know, how you empower them. All these things are an iterative process, and you only learn by taking feedback from the ambassadors and from the community and learning how to integrate that back. So when we first allowed people to apply for the program, it was just like, here's a form, you know, apply. We're going to read through them, and we'll reach out to you directly, and we'll like add you to a Telegram channel. We were just like, we don't know necessarily the way to be effective or impactful yet. We just know we want all the right people in the right place at the right time. And we did that effectively. Then we realized, well, it would be a lot more effective if we could have personal conversations with each of these people first as part of the application process. So now it's standard to do like a 15, 30-minute call where it's very much like, what are you trying to accomplish? How can we help you accomplish it? What would you like to work on if you were an ambassador? And we get a very clear upfront understanding of what people value, what they want to be doing, and so on, like how they want to grow as a part of the ambassador program. And as a result, you know, people are much more engaged now when they start off as ambassadors than they were originally. It's pretty streamlined though. Like, honestly, we ask like 8 questions in a form. We set up a phone call, and we get a sense, because this is a volunteer program. There's like, anybody can kind of leave at any time. We don't start this program and then like hope that like we're just going to hang on to people for dear life and hope they don't, like, people are free to go, and like people have gotten jobs at other projects from being an Enigma ambassador, and we love that. So we're not trying to hold on to people for dear life. We just want to make sure you're good people, that we have something to offer you, that you have something to offer us, and that you can be a part of this. That's it. Once we have enough confidence in that, and that you'll fit in with the existing ambassador community, I don't want to be turning people away at this point. We try to make it so as many great people can join as possible, and have our tools be scalable and our resources be scalable. You know, there's always more to do on that, though. I don't think we've fully figured it out just yet.
Yeah. So what are these people doing for you? Once they signed up, what are they doing?
We decided to, because again, like an ambassador, like if you're a brand ambassador, I hate to keep going back to Bud Light. I don't particularly like Bud Light. But, you know, if you're a brand ambassador for Bud Light, your job is to convince people to drink Bud Light. And generally, every ambassador is sort of interchangeable and replaceable. You're expected to go to the bar and hand out Bud Light. Every ambassador kind of has the same duties, the same responsibilities, you know, so you can have like very consistent, like, here's exactly how it's going to work when you show up to the bar with your Bud Light. Here's exactly how much Bud Light you should bring. That's not how our ambassador program works. So the way that we measure success, the way that we like set goals is very different. Everybody's there for a different reason. Everybody has something slightly different they're trying to accomplish, all with the same mission and values. So instead, we say the mission and values is at the center of the program, just like it is for our project. And then we say, here's the working groups. We divide ambassadors into saying, like, sign up for as many of these working groups as you want. and we assign like goals and metrics and tasks by working group. So for example, we have a business development working group, and everybody involved with that group goes out, they look for projects in different verticals that could benefit from a data privacy solution. And this is both inside the blockchain space and outside, just anybody who seems to like have a need for a decentralized data privacy solution. We keep finding out that this is like every single project. But the ways in which you interact with those projects, like the ambassadors help us be so much more scalable. They directly distribute our materials, they help educate and so on, in a way that like the core Enigma team can't be everywhere at once when we're also building the protocol. So ambassadors have a huge impact in how the protocol actually gets adopted and evangelized. Another one is online awareness. So just everything we write, we want as many people to see it as possible, especially if we think it's like educational material that we want to get into people's hands so that they have something like, nutritious and fun to work with, as opposed to like yet another like speculation article, or like here's this coin going to what moon and so on and so forth. Like that's like junk food, right? So we feel like we have like this responsibility for education and advocacy. So the ambassadors working on that working group are very passionate about exactly that. Like, how do we bring better information to more people, whether it's Enigma specific or not? It's an online awareness initiative. So we have about a dozen of these working groups with a dozen different focuses. People will work in multiple groups. They'll take on multiple tasks. They'll have as much ownership or leadership as they want to take on. But I think that's probably the biggest distinction with our ambassador program versus other ambassador programs inside and outside the space, is that we've given people a lot of ownership in a lot of different areas. And I think it's just another way in which our project is decentralized, but also very empowering. Empowerment is a core value for our project. So we knew when we did an ambassador program, it needed to be decentralized, it needed to be empowering, and it needed to really like celebrate the individual. The idea that all ambassadors have something individual that they can bring to the project and contribute to the world.
So are the working groups run by the project, or kind of does the team sort of run and set the agenda, or how do the working groups get the work done?
A little A, a little B, right? Some of it is driven by the project team just because we live it, breathe it every day. We kind of know what priorities can and should be. But because, again, this is a volunteer organization, volunteer position, if you, again, I'm going to keep using this. If you're a Bud Light ambassador, right, and you're getting paid to be in a bar and hand out the Bud Light, you're not going to get anything like extra for then like hanging a banner or like doing something else, like doing anything creative, like anything that you want to do, right? Like those kind of brands tend to be like very in control of how you represent them. That's not really us, right? So because we're a volunteer program, people take a lot more initiative when it comes to creating their own tasks, suggesting goals. And I love that. I love that people can have the freedom to be creative within the ambassador program. So some of it is direction from us. Some of it is direction from the ambassadors where they've seen an opportunity. And now it's up to us as a core Enigma team. How do we give people more resources so they can pull this off? We try to be as supportive as possible. We do plenty of stuff ourselves, right? Sometimes an ambassador will suggest a task and then the core team themselves will end up executing it. Sometimes it's the reverse, right? We just try to put guardrails, right? Like if somebody suggests something and we know, like, because we've either tried it or like we've measured it, like we know it's not going to be as impactful as something else, we'll probably say, let's prioritize this. Like we help with setting priorities. But in terms of, suggesting what is to be done and so on, I think that's very much a collaborative effort. I don't think that we drive as much of the direction as a traditional organization might in terms of like what is to be done.
So what kind of technical, you must use some kind of tools to track action items and other things that people do.
Yes.
What kind of tools do you use?
This has evolved too, right? You remember how I said it was an iterative kind of process? So we started off like solely on Telegram. We started off trying to just, put people in the right place. We realized pretty quickly that was noisy. People weren't feeling effective. They weren't feeling included. So we moved to Slack, thinking that, it's mobile friendly. So like, again, it's this idea of empowerment and inclusivity. We have a couple conflicting values at times where it's like, we'd love to use all open source tools, but those are not always as accessible as something like Slack, where, there's an app and we have ambassadors who need something that's mobile friendly because they have day jobs, they're on the move. Like we still want them to feel like they're a part of this. We wanted to pick tools that as many people as possible could use and still be part of the program. So our tech stack now kind of looks like we use Slack for real-time communication. We use Google Drive to organize resources.
Okay.
We use Airtable to if you haven't used Airtable, you should, because it's phenomenal. It's like spreadsheets, but you can also set up forms, but you can also set up like Kanban views. So it's like Trello, and you can do task management. So that's really cool. And it's also like, these are all tools we use internally at Enigma. We use Slack internally. We use Airtable internally. So by sharing the same tooling with ambassadors, we make it easier for everybody to stay like fully like aligned with the project and engaged with the project, and vice versa. Like, it's so much easier to ask our core dev team to go and now engage with the ambassadors because the tools are the same, versus like they've somehow been cordoned off in some other area that wouldn't be touched. We wanted to have like a consistent tooling. And then the other way is email. Everybody has
old-fashioned email.
Old-fashioned email, but at least everybody has an email address they're comfortable using. Some of our ambassadors very much value their privacy, which is amazing because that's one of our values as a project, exactly. Unsurprising. So they'll just have like an anonymous email, and we'll work with them that way, and they're extremely effective all the same. We don't have a prescription for how people become ambassadors or stay ambassadors or participate as ambassadors. We just ask that they use the tooling that everybody else does, because that helps build the community of ambassadors. That's it. So we at least try to, the only thing we usually routinely try to enforce is use the tools, use the resources, contribute your own resources, because that way everybody's effort feeds back on everybody else's, and it's a lot more communal versus feeling like everybody's a mercenary.
Yeah.
That's not a very effective ambassador program if everybody's kind of like off and doing their independent thing and there's no visibility. Visibility is another like key aspect to a successful program.
So it's as if you grew your team by 50 or more.
In a sense, right? But at the same time, like, you have to be respectful of the fact that like these are people with other priorities on their time. Like, they have other jobs, they work for other projects, they just share mission and values, right? So like we're very conscious of the fact that like we can be perceived as takers, and we don't want to be takers. We want to be makers. Like, we want to provide value even before we ask for value. We want to provide resources like educational resources and so on before we would like ask somebody to participate in return. And I would say, in some ways we've been very successful at that. In other ways, not so much, because it's a learning experience for everybody involved. We're just, at the very least, we want to show that our hearts are in the right place, because, this is how it starts. You have the core Enigma team, you have the 50 plus ambassadors, hopefully, far more than that sometime in the near future. But then we have the community beyond that, the tens of thousands of people who care about what we're building, the developers who are building on Enigma, the people who are running nodes in the Enigma network. It's just, there's so many people that need to be involved with a decentralized project. There needs to be something that they're all orbiting. And the ambassadors, more than anybody else, help us define our mission and values. They help us define what's at the center of the orbit that's going to hold all of this together. That's the coolest part, right? Is they are the closest planets to the sun. And if we're doing something wrong, they let us know first. We get very effective feedback from the ambassadors, because if we're not making them happy, if they see us as compromising our values, then we have a real problem. That we're very conscious of.
So someone had a question about Zoom.
Mm-hmm.
Do you guys do video talks, like group meetings, say, on Zoom or anything?
Yeah, we do. So we'll have regular all hands meetings as well. I would say every couple of weeks or so, and it can be kind of hit or miss because you want as many people to show up as possible. So we'll send out like a schedule, what can people make, and pick a time. So we will use something like Zoom where 20 to 40 people can show up on a single call. Everybody's face is there. It's another one of those like community building things, hopefully. Right? And then we record the calls and share them internally with ambassadors so they can kind of see like, oh, what did I miss? We send that via email, we put it in the Slack. It's hard, right? It's hard to get people to, because they're global, right? Like, there's time zone considerations and everything else, but we do the best that we can. We try to do as many of those calls as we can, while still being respectful of people's times. But yeah, it was silly of me to forget the importance of Zoom, because FaceTime is really important for community building as well.
Yeah. So are there one or two examples where a program that an ambassador ran went really well or was very successful that you could?
Yeah, I'll talk about the podcast as one example.
Oh, yeah.
So at Enigma, we started this initiative called Decentralize This. And the idea was again, like we were filling a niche of education in the blockchain space that we felt wasn't being filled, where most of this kind of like these shows, right, were either very deep on the tech, so it might be less accessible for somebody with less of a development background, or they were, all about speculation and trading. And if you have no interest in that side of things, then these are not very fun conversations for you. We decided, like, what if we just brought on like consistent format, one person from interesting projects or from enterprise or from the investing side who could talk consistently about a single perspective, which is what is it going to take for all of this stuff to work for millions of people around the world? Not hundreds, not like the hundreds of DApp users, right? But like millions of people that we're supposed to be impacting with decentralized technologies. And that's the focus of the podcast, Decentralize This, just me doing those interviews. And we started it. I was thinking, like, we don't know if this is going to scale. I don't know if I'm going to get enough people to show up. I don't know if we can hit this like consistently weekly cadence of great people coming in. And the ambassadors stepped up in a huge way because they've helped with sourcing guests. They've helped with editing the podcasts. They've helped with summarizing the podcast, like writing up episode descriptions that now end up in like the episodes. They've helped us distribute them, like finding the right people to send these things to. We've hosted people from the privacy space. We had Allison Macrina from the Tor project. We distributed that in like privacy sensitive communities because we knew that they would be very excited to hear that kind of a voice. Same thing like when we brought on Luis from Aragon. It was like anybody who cares about decentralized organizations and governance, we had to make sure that they saw this material, and ambassadors were leading all of that as well. So this is a good opportunity to give a shout out to specific ambassadors who worked on that, because Josh does a lot of our editing. Brendan and Ian and Tracy do a lot of our summarizing, and everybody goes and like does distribution. Marcel and everybody I already mentioned like are always out there making sure this stuff gets into people's hands. So, for example, the podcast, but
awesome.
Pretty much everything else we do, you can guarantee if like Enigma's working on it, an ambassador has touched it in some way.
So, do you pay these ambassadors?
So right now, no. And when I say pay, like you're asking about like sort of like regular salary or like hourly compensation.
Or reward with a token or...
Well, so this is something that we've gone back and forth about quite a bit. And it's really complex once you start introducing these sort of extrinsic motivators. And actually our goal is to have ambassadors really who don't even care about the token so much as they care about the technology. So it's not necessarily like paying people in tokens would even be like a better option than to like do it in dollars or do it in some other denomination, right? It's weird. I think actually we've been through this conversation internally lately, and this is again like sort of a democratic process. Yeah. Should we be even called ambassadors at all? We tried to like, should we rename the program? And I think what we settled on is people like being ambassadors, but we want to sort of make sure people understand what they are an ambassador of, right? Not the Bud Light, but like the why behind the project. So we're moving in the direction of having people be like Enigma privacy ambassadors. And in that sense, we want people who are comfortable evangelizing privacy as a value, privacy as a technology, decentralization actually specifically as a means by achieving privacy and, again, individual empowerment and freedom.
Yeah.
So if we introduce these extrinsic elements, it gets a lot tougher. That said, we're working very hard right now on how we are providing value back. Some of that is as simple as swag, like branded materials, but that's not as important, I think, to the people in the program as time and resources. Like when I say resource, I mean like education. Like we are very experienced on privacy and decentralization and blockchain. Like they want to learn. They want to learn how all this stuff works and fits together. They want to learn on the ground because they probably want to work for a project full time. And I've said people have gotten opportunities through our ambassador program to work for projects, and that includes Enigma. Like we've hired people for internships, we've paid people for like writing documentation that have come from the ambassador program. That I think actually is the healthy way to do it. Let people participate in a volunteer program, and then when there's these very specific tasks, be respectful of people's time and provide that compensation. But do that in a more formal way without having this expectation that all ambassadors are to be paid. That's not what every project would do. And there's probably reasons it can be a negative for us at times, but that's kind of the decision that we made.
So will the Enigma project, we have a question.
Sure.
Will the Enigma project community make privacy education a primary focus of future events? Are you guys looking to kind of build that out?
Yes, absolutely.
More broadly.
100%. That's where we see most of our ambassadors' efforts going as well. And the reason is because we already see there's a ton of great work going on, just like from the Ethereum community at large and other communities, just doing general education. I would say what's going on in Chicago, right, with the Chicago Blockchain Project and everything else is another great example of how there's like community-led education efforts already ongoing. What we see the value for Enigma being, where we see we can specifically provide value to the space, is on education on privacy, both as a technology and as like a value system. So as a technology, it's stuff like what we're doing, secure computation, or it's decentralized data solutions, or it's trusted hardware or cryptography, like these things that are very like technical that people should know how it works. The same way they know how a blockchain works, they should understand how our privacy network works.
Yeah.
It's another key piece of the Web3 stack. So that's the kind of thing we want to be leading on education on, at the same time that we're being evangelists for like, why privacy at all? Why is this important? There's the technical reason, because nothing else works and you can't have meaningful dApps without privacy solutions. And then there's the why of privacy, the individual empowerment and freedom, this idea that you actually get more collaboration if privacy can be preserved, or it's better for consent, right? Consent as to how our data is used requires there to be a baseline level of privacy protection for that data. We didn't consent for data to be shared with Cambridge Analytica and then to 20 companies after that. The only way you can do that is with more data privacy solutions and data control. So we're constantly looking for new partners and collaborators who want to help, not just on the technical side, but on the education side. And it's a big focus for us in 2019 specifically, because we're launching our network, to do more events, not just focused on how you can get started with Enigma, but why we're here at all, why this stuff even matters. We have to have a better story around that than anything else, because otherwise how do you build a global community around something that people don't understand the why of?
So one last question for you.
Sure.
Anyone out there with running their own projects, they want to start an ambassador program?
Yeah.
What would you suggest, or how would you suggest they get started?
I would say they should email me, and I will take 12 hours out of my day, walk you through it.
You can be an ambassador at.
Well, honestly, if people are looking to understand ambassador programs, the best ways to do it is, one, be a part of one, or two, talk to people who have run ones. The third way being joining this webinar, right? But the first thing you should do is do a little audit of a couple things. One is, as a project or organization, what is your mission? What is your values? If you haven't articulated this, it's going to be really hard to scale the ambassador program. It's going to be really hard to scale your community and your project, period. So first, make sure you've got that really solid. Second, do an audit on your community as it stands. Who's already following your project? Who cares about what you're doing? Do they share those values? Do they share your mission? If so, you can kind of move to step 3, which is reach out to those people. Get to know what they care about, figure out if they're already contributing to other projects, ask them if they're interested in contributing in some way to yours, and start defining how this might look, right? You should try to always be understanding your own community at large, right? Like, where do they live? What do they do? What do they care about? You can try to do it with a survey. The better thing for us was always like personal conversations. Even with tens of thousands of people, just getting that cross-section was really healthy. And then you can move to the broader conversation about how do we engage with you long-term to make you a bigger part of this, and how can we make that feel as good for you as possible, and how can we give you as much value as possible. There's probably ways you can bootstrap if you wanted to pay people, or if you wanted to just go to existing events and find people in person and kind of like demonstrate to them and like hand out swag and whatever you want to do. And those are good for like bootstrapping, but in terms of building a sustainable ambassador program where you're going to keep having people show up every day and take ownership on initiatives like podcasts and biz dev and things like that, you need to do what I said. You need to invest in understanding people, and you need to talk to them. And hopefully what you learn is that they already like you and they were just waiting to be asked.
Yeah. That's great. So for anyone out there who wants to join your ambassador program, what should they do?
So we have a form. If you go to blog.enigma.co, that's our blog, /ambassadors. We have a nice landing page where you can learn all about the program. There's a I don't want to say registration form. There's an application form. And our team reviews it. The ambassadors review it. And then we do personal outreach to qualified candidates. We do that, short phone call I talked about. And if everything matches up, if you feel like you'll get value from us and we feel like you have something to offer the other ambassadors and Enigma and the world at large, we'll make it happen. That's how it is. So if you've been thinking about doing something with your time and you're passionate about privacy, decentralization, education, advocacy, we want to help you get started. So you should definitely reach out to me. Go fill out that form, whatever you want to do. If you want to get in touch with me, I'm tor@enigma.co. I look at my email. I'm on Telegram 24 hours a day. I don't sleep. It's fine. Come get in touch with me. I'm happy to help.
Great. Thank you so much.
No, Judy, it was a pleasure.
So our next webinar is going to be in 2 weeks. It's with Simona Pop from Consensus, who runs the Bounties Network. And she's going to talk to us. She's got a great story. She's going to talk to us about how they've been really trying to get regular people, the typical consumer, to use crypto and the challenges and opportunities she's found. Thanks.
Thank you.